Today we're going to make a Fatshark battery because right now my current Fatshark batteries are showing low power conditions. So we're going to use these holders that came in a little kit from Amazon, and they come individually, but I've glued two together, again pretty solidly. These are what they look like individually. They come 5 in this kit. I glued them together with Gorilla Glue and they are stuck big time. So anyways, we're going to use those. We are going to use this up converter to get 9 volts direct through this barrel connector so that we hopefully can cure my low power issue with my rapid fire module. So first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and tin up these pads, and we are going to figure out how we're going to route these wires. Now of course that is a 3S balance lead because you want to go ahead and balance charge these particular batteries, just make them nicer. So we'll go ahead and tin the pads and make sure that we've got a good solid foundation for that to go onto. And then we're going to grab our battery pack and we're going to put these, the positive to the negative, back on the back so that we are actually connecting these batteries in series. I'm going to go ahead and remove some of the insulation right here so that we can just connect them directly, and then I can run that red wire up so that it will be the balance lead connection for this particular deal. So yeah, this is intricate work and really tough, and sometimes you can just cut your finger right in two if you're not careful. So be very, very careful with this or you will end up with an open finger. Trust me on this. So now that we have this open, let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit, and then we can wrap the black wire actually around that exposed wire, and that'll connect them, and then leave the rest of the wire to connect to the top of the balance lead. So we'll strip this here in a way that I sometimes just get completely wrong, but let's wrap that around there, and then we'll drop a little bit of solder on it to go ahead and strengthen that bond. And we'll drop that solder right on there and make sure that that is a good hot solder. And then we want to go ahead and pick up some electrical tape so we can electrically isolate this and make sure it doesn't short out on anything. So I always take just a little piece, rip it up there, and then cut it, because I really hate pulling the electrical tape for some reason. It's just always difficult. But we want to go ahead and run this wire kind of down that channel. It just makes it easier. It kind of gives it a place to actually lay in there. And drop another little piece of electrical tape on top of that, just for directional keeping there. Make sure it doesn't fly up and fly all loose and get all in the way. So we'll set that down. And now let's get prepped to add in our 2S balance connector so that we can balance charge these batteries and make sure that they stay nice and balanced and safe and happy and live a long life. So we'll go ahead and pull these ends, and then go ahead and kind of twist them together to make them easier to connect, and then get them tinned up so that they make an easy connection over to the balance lead. Now the thing we want to go ahead and do is we want to connect the positive and the negative wire for the balance lead to the in portion of the connector. And the reason for this is because it's on that side of the batteries that it's actually a direct straight through connection to the batteries. If we did it to the other side, it would try to be going through the up converter, so technically working against 9 volts. I don't even actually know if it would work. I wouldn't want to try it. I'm sure it would probably do damage. So from here, we'll go ahead and get these wires tinned, which we're going to go ahead and do here right now. We'll get this tinned up and make sure that we have a good connection. And then we'll go ahead and grab this converter here. Let's put it in. It really does look like it fits really well here. And then we want to make sure that we get those connected down. Let's hit that with a soldering iron. It should be just a quick hit. And then we'll hit the other one. Make sure to do red to positive and black to negative. Just with a quick hit. And should be good. Let's go ahead and test it to make sure that we are solid. Then next we want to grab our balance connector and we want to prepare that. So let's make sure that all these wires are the same length. And again, we're going to go to the inside. So let's go ahead and clip these out, and then we'll go ahead and pull the ends and tin them to make sure that we are good and solid there. Tinning away. This really is an important step, so make sure you don't skimp here. So again, we're going to take the red wire, which is our positive side, our full positive side, and we're going to put it to the in portion of the up converter. So we'll just kind of lay that on top and solder it. And these can be a little bit tricky to handle, so be careful. And then with the negative, just put it up there. And now you remember that one wire we actually brought over, and let's hit that again because it, I don't know, just didn't look good to me. So then remember that other wire that we ended up bringing up from the other side. Well, that's going to go to our middle, and the reason is because that will actually split for the balance lead and allow us to actually charge them, charge the two batteries separately to get them balanced. So one thing I forgot to do was put a little piece of electrical tape in here to isolate it. I mean, it probably would be fine, but we want to make sure that we don't get an arc on there. The bottom of the board that they sent was pretty solid, but you just don't want to mess that up. And a short in the side of your head next to your temple is probably not a good idea to have happen. Anything you can do to prevent it, especially something as simple as putting a little slip of electrical tape in there, it's a no-brainer. So the next thing we're going to want to do is we are going to want to isolate this. So we put a little strip of heat shrink on here, and then we're going to connect up our balance lead wire, the last one. So I'm kind of bending it in place, and then just touch it with a soldering iron, and both of these ends are tinned, so they should just go right together. And then we check it for strength, make sure that we are good. Drop that little bit of heat shrink over the top of it, and then we'll hit it with our heat gun. So while that shrinks down, then we can go ahead and hit it with some electrical tape to tape everything together, get it all isolated, and even secure that buck converter to the top. So we'll go ahead and make sure that I just kind of like to work my electrical tape, you know, nice and solid along the sides. And make sure to leave that screw clear, or else you will not be able to adjust that converter. So again, making sure that that screw is nice and open. We'll go ahead and roll this a couple of different times just to make sure that everything is nice and isolated and we're not going to have any shorts. And now let's just go ahead and get the barrel connector actually hooked up. So I've got one of these connectors. Again, the center is positive and the outside ring is negative. So I'm going to go ahead and strip it, get it tinned up here, and we'll get these soldered. So here we are tinning the wires. Again, these aren't going to be pushing very many amps, so they don't have to be that thick. So we'll just go ahead and get that all tinned and nice. And then again, in the center is the positive. So we'll go ahead and hit this with a little bit of flux, just because it's not the stickiest thing in the world. And trying to make this actually go in there, and you could go ahead and put it through the loop. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bend it back, and I'm actually going to make a little bit of a hook. So when we hook this back here, then I'm going to hit it with just a little nick of solder there. So that solidifies it and make sure that it's good and not going to go anywhere. And then I realize it's actually easier to do the negative first because the positive wire just gets in the way. But, you know, you live and you learn, or you watch a video like this and you figure out the way you're supposed to do it instead of the way I did it. So we'll go ahead and get this kind of bent out of the way, get this tinned up here, because even tinning it's going to be a little bit rough. So get it tinned, and it does take a lot of heat for some reason to go ahead and get this tinned. So there it is finally, actually, with a good pool of solder on it. And then go ahead and hit it, and it gets nice and solid. And again, we'll check it, and then put the barrel connector shroud on the top of it. Make sure it goes on the correct way, and secure that down. And then I like to put some shrink wrap over the top of this. And again, since we're not really worried about separating these wires, I'm going to go ahead and heat shrink it all the way down. Now the thing that I like to do here is I actually like to step down my heat shrink sizes so that it will actually put just a little bit of strain relief from the barrel connector all the way down to the wire, so that when you pull on that wire, you're actually pulling on the shrink wrap and not the actual wires or the solder joints themselves. So go ahead and put that in there, heat shrink it down, or shrink down the heat shrink, and then we're going to grab another piece here and we're going to cut it kind of short. But what we're going to have to do is we're going to actually have to stretch it to go over that barrel connector. And you can use your fingers to actually crush it down a little bit more and make it stick a little bit better. Let me cut this little chunk off the top here and try to put it on, and you'll see here in just a second that that barrel connector is just too large to actually get that heat shrink directly over it. So what we can do is we can stretch it a little bit. So I always take my needle nose pliers, put it in there, kind of stretch it, and you can rip it, so be aware, but as you know, heat shrink is cheap. But then get it over the edge. Now when you do this, it's not going to shrink all the way down to actually fit over the shrink wrap that's underneath. So what I then do is I get it as small as it'll go, and then I step it down. I get one more chunk of shrink wrap, just a little one, pull it off there, and cover that piece, and then shrink wrap it down. And they stick pretty well to each other. I mean, it's not, you know, you're not going to lift a car with this stuff, but any strain relief that you can take off those solder joints is a good thing. And that's kind of the way I do. And I roll it in my fingers just a little bit to try to stick them down even better. And now we've got our 18650s. I'm going to go ahead and place them in the holder. And we're going to check them with a battery checker. And look at that. 755, 378, 377. Well, they're pretty close to balanced anyway. Good deal. Now we're going to grab our leads. We're going to hook them into the voltage out portion. And we're going to start using that screw to turn down the voltage, because right now it's at 16 volts. So we just keep turning it down until we get to 9 volts, because that's where we want to actually be, right on the 9.0. Now that we've got that, we want to go ahead and connect our barrel connector. And of course, you know, positive to positive, negative to negative, and that's the way we'll roll. So again, we want to make sure about the polarity, but first we need to tin those pads. So let's go ahead and get these tinned up. We already put some flux on them, so we'll tin them up, try not to get too much heat in the top of that plastic. Again, and we need to tin the ends of the connector. So we got those, and now we'll set this up. Again, positive to positive, negative to negative. Make sure that we are correct. And then set that down, just a little bit of heat, and then test it with just a little bit of a tug. And then we really want to secure it down with a good amount of electrical tape. So go ahead, wrap that there, and make sure we capture that the barrel connector lead, because we definitely don't want that to be strained. And I think I got it set to where I can run this electrical tape, and just with a little bit of a stretch, you can run it, you know, cross-side, you know, side to side, and then and wrap that pretty good. But we make sure that we get that all kind of solidified down. But I think I can leave it to where I can actually replace these 18650s. So I'll roll it a couple of times here just to make sure that we got good connectivity and good protection. And then of course I use my razor blade to cut it. And then let's check it in my Fatsharks to see whether or not I actually have good connectivity and whether or not there's a low power condition. So check my rapid fire module. And over to status. Low power? No. Out. Foxtrot standing.